on a big pour this morning at 3 a.m. This is what it looks like, 3 a.m. and 30-mile-an-hour winds. Gonna be running a little boom pump action here. This is for a massive metal building. It's got some I-beams, all red steel. Here's some of the templates. You know, this is pretty typical. Lots of space, big buildings. This is kind of cool. They rigged their own little template here. They just cut the bottom out of this just so you could see what's going on with the concrete placement. Well, so I'm just out here pouring concrete. This isn't my job, but I'm gonna finish it like it is. All right, here's the pour. The wind's blown about 40 to 50 miles an hour on this pour. I was a little skeptical initially, even considering pouring in these conditions, but there's a product. It's called evaporation retardant, and Meadows makes it. And so we use that before the bowl float, after the screed, throughout this whole job. Spraying it wasn't easy to spray because the wind was just taking the spray and just pushing it wherever. But we kind of got it on there. I mean, we stayed right on top of it, and that was the key. You'll be able to see that throughout this job. So right now, we're just going around the edges, pouring the footings out. This is for Redmond Construction out here in Mojave Valley. This is one of their gigs, and Doug, my brother's actually working for them, running their concrete crew. So I could go in there and pour on any given day that they're pouring, or set it, whatever it might be, but I'm still trying to do my own thing at the same time, so it makes it a little challenging. But in this case right here, I'm on this one. And it was a nice experience for me. I've done these many a times in the past, so it's not like it's new, but I haven't did it quite a while actually. But this is 120 yards here, and this was a last minute thing. They decided to put some expansion foam around some of the pipes coming up through the concrete, which is always a good idea. I like it on water mains more than anything. I mean, electrical pipes, I'm not as concerned, you know, if they get cracked or whatever. But on a water line, I'd be more cautious with something like that. How do you like that bowl flow? Huh? It's gonna make it flat, huh? Yeah. So what we have here is, we have Luis, which he's worked for me many a times, and he's also working for Redmond now. He's on the rod, along with Jorge, which is also I've worked with on previous jobs. Then we have Efren. So we have Efren's team, which includes Jorge, Junior Luis, and then we have Senior Luis. Not that they're related. One's just younger than the other. Here's the product. So that's my job on this one. During the pouring process, I was in charge of spraying the evaporation retardant. You got the milkman job? Yep. Oh, I love that. It sounds like an easy gig, but as many times as I had to refill that thing, running back and forth and staying up with the screed. We poured this all out in about 40 minutes, all 120 yards of it. So running back and forth, keeping up with the pump and the screed, it was quite a bit of work actually doing that. And then I had to stand right behind the screed because you could only spray about 5, maybe 8 feet before the wind just took it away. So I'm basically in the middle of the screed the whole time. So we only did one application of that product and then bowl floated it in, and it seemed to work great because you didn't have that spongy effect as it cured out from the wind. Typically that's what you'd get, like a surface that was spongy, crispy on top, wet below. But with this product, it did the trick. And I go back the very next day to check it out, and I'll show that too, see what it really looked like while we're saw cutting it. Now this is a 16-foot screed, and this is big rock. This is a 3,500 PSI big rock mix, 16-foot screed. Well, it could be tough to pull, you know, especially if it was like a 4-inch slump. But this was more like a 6-inch slump, so it makes it a little easier when you're pulling 16 feet. This pour started at 4 a.m. They had all the light standards set up out here. S&S Concrete is supplying the concrete. The loads were all here together, so it went really nice. I've had jobs like this where you'll get like maybe 3 loads, and then all of a sudden you're waiting 2 hours for the next one, and you end up with multiple cold joints throughout a pour. I've had that happen with, I think the company that notoriously will do that to you is called Robertson's, if anybody knows them. That wraps it up. He ended up just getting 12 loads. I don't know how much was left in that truck, but that worked out pretty good when you don't have to call a cleanup, and then you're all wrapped up and everything's on the ground in 45 minutes. It's very cold and windy, but this was nice. The owner, Butch Redmond, came over, brought some donuts here for everybody and coffee. Here's some post bollards going in. These are about 8-inch, and these are going to be on each side of the roll-up door entrances. So sometimes what you kind of want to do when you have bollards like this is it's nice to preset them. You know, if you're going to tailgate it, then you can't really preset it because they get in the way of your truck and your chute and everything. But if you know you're gonna be using a boom, then you just want to go ahead and preset these down low, like a little mini footing underneath at the very bottom, and get them all in the right place, and then you just pour around them. But in this case, they had the bollards, but they had got slipped, you know, in the paperwork or in the drawings where they were gonna go. And they had to rush to the yard and grab these. But fortunately, this footing was big enough and wide enough because of all of the erosion. This type of soil is sand, so every time you dig it's a foot wide, it ends up 2 feet wide because just the slough off. So everything was wide enough to fit them in there. And they go down about 3 feet. So we did attempt to spray, you know, before we bull floated again, but you could only spray about 10 feet off of the edge of the form before the wind just blew it away. Here's the foreman right here. He's the guy that got it all set up. And you'll notice there how the concrete's a little lower than the top of that form. And the purpose of that is because it's a metal building and the surrounding concrete around this foundation will be set down 2 inches. So in order to go in and out of the roll-up doors, you cut it down a little bit. Also, that keeps the water from going in the building, and you have a nice little ramp going in and out of the doors. And the surrounding exterior concrete is below top of foundation. So that's a good idea right there. Great idea, actually. You don't see a lot of metal buildings, they don't do that. You'll just have a flat entry. And then you're going to have to ramp the exterior concrete in those locations. So either way, you can do it. The templates are all coming off. We're probably about 2.5 hours into this right now. Templates all came off. Bolts are nice and clean. And these bolts, the tolerance of the accuracy of these templates, there's only 3/16 of an inch tolerance. So when you're setting these bolts, they have to be right on. The actual red iron plate, bottom plate of that I-beam, sits flush on the concrete. So there's no wiggle room really if those bolts are off. But I was thinking of an idea, in which I've done this in the big refineries and stuff, where they're doing big pipe down in the harbors of LA. I did a lot of harbor work in refineries, and the way they would set these steel beams, we would double nut them at the bottom. That way we could plumb them up off of the double nut system, and then we dry pack underneath them to keep them off the ground so that they don't rust out, and that you can plumb them and adjust them. Also, by having that height, you could have a little wiggle room on pushing the bolts over and fitting it through those holes. I think that's how I would personally do it. I would check with the engineer, like, hey, I want to dry pack on this. I want these to inch off the ground, that kind of thing.
I think it's gonna be in here.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, they have 2 power trowels here, and they didn't have the float pans, but I had 2. So I went home, picked up a couple float pans, brought them back because we wanted to get on this thing. It just wasn't going off in this cold, and I wanted to open it up. You can get on it earlier with the float pan, so that is going to open that surface up and help flatten it out and get it to start curing out a little quicker. So that's what we did. We got the float pans on here, opened it up, and then everything started happening because we were sitting around here, just twiddling our thumbs for about 2.5 hours. And then we hit it with the float pans, and then boom, it was nonstop action after that. So the nice thing about machines and power trowels is all you really got to be concerned with by hand is around the perimeter, around your pipes, around your bolts. And then power trowel's going to do the rest. We ended up hitting it with we had to shut off. We got the first load with the pan. Right when we got into this next load, we had to wait again. So it's a good idea to tape those pipes off like they did here, even though they are well above concrete. You don't want concrete falling into those pipes or anything, because then you can't pull your wires through. So I've got a 3-foot machine here. This one's a 5.5 horsepower. So it's much lighter than the other 3-footer. The other 3-footer is like 12 horsepower. So what I did was I ran out in front of the big machine. I took the small one, hit it early with the pan, and then Efford was on the bigger machine right behind me with no pan. I was tempted to go get my Milwaukee cordless power trowel because the 3-footer I had a lot of throttle issues. You couldn't get it to full throttle because of the adjustment on the throttle cable. So I was kind of fighting that, trying to hold the throttle on to get it to roll to keep up with this concrete. And inevitably what I did is there's a spring on the throttle cable. I had to take the filter off to get to it. And then I pulled that spring a little tighter so it held it full throttle wide open. So I keep this thing rolling. But that reminded me why I like that cordless, power trowel. Like you just press a button and then, it's going. So Efren's really making a nice pattern here, really doing a beautiful pattern. But what I was doing when I was using the float pan, I was following the loads rather than just doing a pattern. I'd follow the load placement, which made more sense to me, because if I hadn't did that way, I would have sunk in the wet mud. So this is pretty much getting close to your final pass, because you can see that the whip is going out behind the power trowel. This is that little 5.5 horser. I pulled the pan off. I'll tell you, when you're running it with a pan, much harder to hold that machine because there's so much more friction on that pan rather than just a couple blades that you're fighting it the whole way. Here's a little bit of the cleaning process. This is Luis Jr. We have another Luis. You've probably seen him on my other jobs, the older gentleman. So he's senior. Here's how we're pulling the machines off right into the front of the tractor. They have a hook. You can see the hook on that kind of goes over the fuel tank. You can hook a chain to it. You can just lift them that way too, which is really your best way to do it, is by chain. A lot of times what can happen is you can bend the shafts on the blades by trying to maneuver them like this. So, if you want your stuff in mint condition all the time, you always lift and drop with chains. That way you can have all 4 points of the blades on a solid surface. Once those get bent, you just feel them bouncing all over the concrete. So we went from 4 a.m. to 3 p.m. on this one. So it was a good day. We finished it up in the daylight. That was the only advantage I could see pouring that early in the morning, is because you're guaranteed to finish in the daytime. Here's the next day on the saw cutting. I wasn't really involved in this part, but so it was very close to my house, so I just stopped in, see how it was going over here, and see how it turned out.
I don't want to see those up there. Look at that, Louis. Big blooper. Let me see. Yeah, that's. Let's see if it fits. Put your foot right there. I want to see if it fits. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Why did you do that, Luis?
I didn't mean
We
to.
gotta-
I got it walk.
We gotta tear it out now. You know that. Are they coming out easy or hard?
We've only done these. Got to these. So we just
Oh
got in.
shit! What happened to the edge there?
That's still clean.
Huh? The concrete.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was kind of surprised to see that, you know, on this form removal with the big chips and chunks missing out of the concrete.
Yeah, that's a son of a bitch. Well, all in all, it turned out real good. Just some minor defects, easy stuff to fix. I'm happy with this project.
Anyway, thanks for watching. Make sure you like, share, subscribe, hit the notification button. That way you'll be notified on my next upload. Also, if you ever need any help on a job site, you can get me on a Zoom through my consultation page through my website. Have a good one. Bye.